Almost everyone who has tried to learn a language has heard of the CEFR, and in particular the 6 CEFR levels, which go from A1 to C2. The CEFR is used all over the world to teach, learn, and assess languages. But how much do you really know about it? In this video, I'm going to show you why everything you know about the CEFR is probably wrong, and how this is damaging your language learning. By the end of this video, you will have a new perspective that will give you confidence and help you get the level of English you want. Let's start by talking about who created the CEFR. Most people think that it was created by the EU, or European Union, but it was actually created by the Council of Europe. This is a really important difference, because the EU is a political organization, but the Council of Europe is a human rights organization. Wait, why is a human rights organization writing a document about language learning? The answer to this question is the key to understanding what the CEFR actually is. When you think of levels like A2 and B1, you probably think of exam results and workbooks and vocabulary lists and all of the other technical aspects of language. And unfortunately, that is a common perception. But let me read you the original goal of the CEFR: to encourage the study by its own nationals of the languages, history, and civilization of other European countries. It is called a framework, but if you take the time to read it, you will find that in one way, it is actually more like a work of ideology, aiming to create democratic citizens and intercultural dialogue. But in another way, the CEFR is a dull, bureaucratic creation. It's a long and dense technical document, and most people, even academics who work with it, don't read the whole thing. But despite that, it has been an enormous success. In fact, it is the second most successful project the Council of Europe has ever created, second only to their Declaration of Rights. Unfortunately, the CEFR has become a victim of this very success. The Council of Europe website is full of documents and presentations that lament all of the ways that the CEFR is misunderstood and misused. You can feel the pain and frustration in their voices. Let me explain why. As I said at the beginning of this video, the most well-known part of the CEFR is the 6 levels, ranging from A1 to C2, which are generally used to describe the language ability from beginner to advanced level. These are used by millions of people every day to teach and measure their language ability using an official standard. So you might be surprised to learn that those levels are not a standard. In fact, they were deliberately designed to not be a standard. The idea of seeing the CEFR as some sort of standard is a constructed problem, a misinterpretation, and a misuse of the CEFR itself, as it intentionally lacks exactness. But wait a second, what about all those exams that use the CEFR levels to give students certificates that are accepted for university applications, job applications, or for migration? Well, that's also wrong. The CEFR levels are not, nor were they ever claimed to be true and unequivocal standards for the simple reason that no true unequivocal standards can exist when it comes to language testing. In fact, the Council of Europe directly criticizes TOEFL and IELTS for corrupting the CEFR in this way. Neither the TOEFL IBT nor the IELTS study use the tools provided by the Council of Europe to profile test content. Yes, that's right. Almost everyone from teachers to students to enormous corporations is misusing the CEFR. And the reason is simple. By combining the idea of 6 simple levels and the perceived authority of the CEFR, you can make a lot of money. No wonder the Council of Europe is so frustrated. And this is where things start to get really interesting for you as a language learner, because now it's time for us to talk about what the CEFR really is and what it can teach you about being a successful language learner. Let's start with the CEFR levels. Most people view them like this. An A2 learner is a beginner, so they can work at a supermarket where they can have simple, short conversations. But a C1 learner is advanced, so they can work as an engineer and give complex presentations about technical subjects. But this is the wrong way to look at both the CEFR levels and language learning in general. Look at this example from the CEFR itself. It shows the language abilities of an imaginary adult scientist. The first thing to note is that it doesn't break ability into the traditional 4 skills of reading, writing, speaking, and listening. Instead, it breaks them into categories based on interaction and meaning. The second thing to note is that some of this person's abilities, like explaining data and note-taking, are at the C1 level, while other skills like informal discussion with friends are at a B1 level. While not perfect, this is a much more realistic representation of what language ability is really like. Learners do not have and do not need equal abilities in every part of language. As the CEFR beautifully describes it, levels are not fixed ranges, neatly separated by lines, but are more like the colors in the rainbow. I cannot overstate the importance of this perspective of language learning. Bad language learning uses a fixed curriculum that is designed by people thousands of miles away who don't know anything about you or the people, places, and cultures where you will be using your language. The emphasis is on deficiency and using tests to punish you for all the things you can't do. Good language learning always starts by finding out what you need and want, and then focuses on developing those skills. The emphasis is on proficiency and all the things you can do. Remember that the CEFR was written by a human rights organization. The core of the CEFR isn't really about language. It's about people. As they say, the CEFR takes an innovative stance in seeing learners as language users and social agents, and thus seeing language as a vehicle for communication rather than as a subject to study. Any classroom or online course where you don't have any control over your learning, where you don't actually use language to communicate with others, violates the core idea of the CEFR and good language learning in general. The idea that there is an authority deciding what you should learn and how you should be judged for using it is the opposite of what any human rights organization wants. Take a moment to think about how different this perspective is from the idea you have in your head of what it means to be a B1 or a C1 learner. Think of how different it is from all of the graded learning materials you have ever used. Think of how different it is from all the promises that people make when they sell you courses that will take you from A2 to B2 in 3 months. Think of how different it is from the way that exam companies sell you the idea that a single test can give you a single result, which represents the infinite complexity of your language ability. Learning a language is one of the most difficult things that you will ever try to do as an adult. It's the equivalent of conquering a mountain. But it's not a mountain that you're supposed to carry. It's a mountain that you're supposed to climb. The CEFR wasn't created so that you could spend all your time studying and paying false authorities to give you imaginary levels and meaningless approval. It was created so that you could become an independent learner, so that you could use your language skills to communicate with people from different countries and cultures and become a more open-minded and more free person. And that's a human right worth fighting for. I'm Christian, this is Kangaroo English, and I'll see you in class.